Imagine waking up one morning to hear the president of your country look straight into the camera and talk about your community as if you were a stain on the map. Not a group of citizens, workers, parents, and students, but a problem to be removed. That is what many Somali Americans heard when President Donald Trump, now serving his second term in the White House, once again painted Minnesota as a hellhole and suggested that Somalis shouldn't be here. In a state that hosts the largest Somali diaspora in the United States, these are not just off-the-cuff insults. Coming from the sitting president, they function like a political signal and a policy roadmap. When Trump describes Somali communities as a threat and questions whether Congresswoman Ilhan Omar should even be allowed to serve, he is doing more than attacking his opponents. He is testing how far a president can go in redefining who is treated as a full American and who is constantly framed as an outsider. Underneath the noise, there is a quiet, calculated pattern. Trump's rhetoric consistently links migrants from Muslim-majority and African nations with crime, chaos, and national decline. Then his administration backs that story up with immigration decisions that make it harder for those very communities to enter, to stay, and to feel secure. Take the decision to end or weaken temporary protections for certain Somali residents. Temporary protected status was created to shield people whose home countries are facing war, disaster, or state collapse. By targeting that protection while talking loosely about Somali gangs without evidence, the administration sends a clear message. Your legal right to remain is not anchored in law and principle, but in the political mood of the moment. It turns hundreds of families into permanent hostages of Washington's rhetoric. At the same time, the push to tighten vetting for H-1B visas and other legal pathways is marketed as a way to defend American workers. In reality, it often hits highly skilled migrants from the very third world countries that Trump disparages in his speeches. The subtext is easy to read. Even if you bring talent, investment, and innovation, your presence is still treated as a risk to be controlled rather than an asset to be welcomed. This is how a country quietly closes doors while insisting that the system is still open. Micro coverage often misses is the day law on Somali Americans themselves. When the president repeatedly talks about your community as if it were a security threat, it shapes how strangers look at your mosque, your neighborhood, your accent, and your clothing. Parents begin to worry not only about paperwork and visas, but about bullying at school, harassment in public, and the silent discrimination that never makes it into an official report. There is also a chilling effect on political participation. Ilhan Omar is not only a symbol, she is a test case. If a sitting member of Congress can be portrayed as fundamentally illegitimate because of her origin and faith, what message does that send to any young Somali American thinking about running for office, organizing a campaign, or speaking out on national issues? The underlying warning is simple. You can vote and pay taxes, but the moment you claim visible power, some will say you do not belong. From a historical perspective, we have seen this movie before. Irish Catholics in the 19th century, Italians and Eastern European Jews in the early 20th century, Japanese Americans during World War II, Mexican and Central American migrants in more recent decades. Each wave has been cast at some point as a civilizational threat. The question now is whether Somali Americans and other Muslim communities will be allowed that same journey, or whether they will remain permanently marked as foreign, no matter how many generations are born on American soil. What makes this moment more dangerous is the concentration of power around the narrative. Trump is no longer a candidate shouting from the outside. He is the president again, with the machinery of federal policy behind him. His words are not just campaign lines. They shape enforcement priorities, resource allocation, and the tone of agencies that handle immigration, security, and civil rights. When the person at the top normalizes suspicion toward a specific community, it becomes easier for lower-level actors to interpret rules in a way that squeezes that community harder. None of this means that immigration policy cannot be debated. Every serious country has arguments about borders, labor markets, vetting, and security. Those are legitimate questions. But there is a bright line between arguing about what people do and condemning who people are. When migrants are talked about as garbage, when entire neighborhoods are reduced to hellholes, the debate leaves the terrain of policy and enters the logic of exclusion. It becomes less about how to manage migration and more about who is worthy of belonging. For Somali Americans in Minnesota and across the country, this is the deeper stakes of the current moment. It is not only about a visa category, a court ruling, or a single speech. It is about whether their children will grow up in a United States that sees them as an integral part of the national story, or in a country where the head of state periodically treats them as a mistake that history forgot to correct. As you listen to this rhetoric and watch these policies unfold, one question hangs in the air. Is this truly about making America safer? Or are we quietly redrawing the boundaries of who is allowed to be American at all, and who will always be treated as a guest in their own country?